How Radiohead let down their fans. As Radiohead arrive at the O2 this week on what is effectively a greatest hits tour, they find themselves in a novel and precarious position. For decades, the Oxford Quintet reflected that zeitgeist so perceptively that it felt, at times, that they were that zeitgeist. An alienated band for alienated times. While Oasis, their near contemporaries, looked to the past, Tom York's cut-up lyrics for the Bends, OK Computer, and Kid A looked to the future. Only, now we are in that future and all their prophecies have come to pass, the Ice Age coming, the next World War, the 4-minute warning, the tanks rolling in. Radiohead seem curiously out of sync. Having been vocally political for years, they have found themselves under attack for their position, or lack thereof, on Gaza and Israel. Last year, York was heckled into briefly abandoning a solo live performance in Melbourne by a pro-Palestinian protester, and has recently been taken to task by Roger Waters, formerly of Pink Floyd, for daring to play in Israel. The 5 members of Radiohead have meanwhile revealed that their differing stances on the conflict have nearly torn the band apart. Johnny Greenwood is married to Israeli artist Sharona Kaiten, and has performed with Israeli musician Dudu Tasser, though UK gigs were cancelled after pressure from the BDS movement. It's possible to see the band's determination to relive past glories as evidence of mature disagreement. But still, here's another striking contrast. While the seemingly irreconcilable Gallagher brothers were able to put aside their differences earlier this summer, Radiohead's lap of honor comes with rancor and sniping. As prophets of the disaffected, they have long evaded criticism. But nothing lasts forever. It's possible to see Radiohead's current predicament as a mimetic crisis, to use René Girard's term. This is when groups of people are faced with problems and contradictions that are insurmountable within the terms of their worldview. Rather than confront these realities, the group establishes consensus, catharsis, and a purging of responsibility through the sacrifice of a scapegoat. Girard called this the surrogate victim mechanism, which already sounds like a great Radiohead B-side. Faced with apocalyptic horrors, unable to hold the perpetrators to account, we turn to surrogates to punish, which is a driving force of recent atrocities in the Middle East and the response in the West. It results in the transference of animus from the butchers onto, for example, musicians, writers and artists, complicit and supposedly equivalent in their silence. Without proportion, the lines of culpability are made to blur. Human beings operate according to mimetic desire in Girard's view. They look to each other to find out what to believe and wish for. A generation had looked to Radiohead. Who better than to have as a scapegoat? The larger the sacrifice, the greater the coming harvest. When Radiohead first emerged in 1993, grunge was becoming a dead end, and a generation was searching for something more. Viewed as a one-hit wonder for their anthem Creep, Radiohead faced an existential crisis, but they had a crucial advantage over their American counterparts. Their focus was on disaffection rather than passive suffering or self-destruction. Disaffection was active, resistant, and could be approached with a much more complex musical palette. It could be used to create a portrait of an entire civilization rather than simply a tortured self. The leap in quality from their underwhelming debut Pablo Honey, 1993, to the Bends, 1995, via the abrasive, deliberately uncommercial My Iron Lung EP, 1994, was enormous. With the Bends, Radiohead ascended to a lofty plateau that they have occupied for almost 30 years, longer than just about any comparable rock band. But Radiohead have never settled into a comfort zone in the manner of more well-adjusted bands, like U2 or Coldplay, say. The disaffection, which attracted hordes of no-logo reading Gen Xers, was not a performance. The discomfort was real. See the 1998 documentary Meeting People is Easy. While mistrustful of the music industry, Radiohead trusted their fans to accompany them into weirder challenging territory, From OK Computer, 1997, the perfect encapsulation of premillennial anxiety, to the daring electronic ruptures of Kid A, 2000, and the unfairly overshadowed Amnesiac, 2001. These were not so much attempts to purge the normies accrued by the bends, as a conscious effort to kill the normie within. This was territory few fans expected or even knew existed. In the years that followed, the only real musical misstep has been the curiously incomplete and claustrophobic The King of Limbs, 2011. But with hindsight, it was the band's most overtly political album, Hail to the Thief, 2003, released in the shock and awe phase of the so-called War on Terror, its title an allusion to George W. Bush's stolen election, that opened Pandora's box. Radiohead's greatest lyrical strength has always been collage. While your Bonos and Bruce Springsteens were bogged down in glaringly inauthentic authenticity, hokey storytelling and self-righteous preaching, Radiohead found a way to be obliquely political, reflecting society back to itself like a fractured mirror. Collage was both the medium and the message, York's lyrical style anticipating the bombardments of disparate images and data that count now as daily life. It was also replicated in the art style York developed with Stanley Donwood for Radiohead's cover art, currently on display at the Ashmolean in Oxford. The use of collage meant Radiohead could avoid literalism and the moralism that often accompanies it. It also gave them a freedom to juxtapose divergent subjects and tones together. One of the clichés associated with the band is their focus on technology, the depressed airport tropes. But there are other lyrical tics that are just as prevalent. One is York's use of the archaic, whether from the religious past, red crosses on wooden doors, the Holy Roman Empire, or more recent ephemera, rag and bone men, toothpaste adverts. Medieval images recur, from heads on sticks to omens in the night skies, implying that for all our modern appearances, we have not changed much from the days of the pillories and gallows. Fragments of bedtime stories and nursery rhymes are scattered throughout The Cheshire Cat, Peter Pan, Henny Penny, The Bony King of Nowhere from Bagpuss, adding to the feeling of menace and stolen innocence. The distance from childhood dreams to A Pig in a Cage on Antibiotics is damning. York is also adept at recontextualizing managerial speak to sinister effect, your services are not required, I will stop at nothing, etc. On electioneering, from OK Computer, the juxtapositions of riot shields, voodoo economics, it's just business, cattle prods, and the IMF neatly encapsulate the anti-capitalism of that era. But it is still the poetic and enigmatic that truly stirs the heart, as in the anti-war anthem, Harry Patch, in memory of, inspired by one of Britain's last surviving veterans from the First World War. I've seen devils coming up from the ground. The cut-up style gave them space to be elusive, and by critiquing everything, Radiohead may have felt immune to critique themselves. But the abyss has eyes too. From its title onwards, Hail to the Thief felt too on the nose. It was partially understandable given the social context of the time. The invasion of Iraq was being launched despite widespread public opposition in the UK. It was not a time when subtlety felt appropriate, and York's writing duly took on a more direct and overt approach. This resulted in powerful moments such as the Orwellian punk of 2 + 2 = 5, and the later solo track, Harrow Downhill, about the hounding and untimely death of the weapons expert David Kelly. But the album's most haunting moments are still notably indirect. I Will was inspired by the horrific massacre of hundreds of women and children by the US Air Force, whose stealth bombers directed 2 missiles down into the Amiria bomb shelter during the Gulf War, searing the images of victims onto the walls. I will lay me down in a bunker underground, where I won't let this happen to my children. The song ends as a lullaby, chilling partly because of what it leaves out. It is one of their most delicate and devastating tracks, and proof that you must first move the listener before you can convince them. But one of the problems of assuming a political platform is that, like the mafia, you